Warren Buffett is probably the best investor ever, and the man loves to read.
I read every book in the Omaha Public Library on investments by the time I was 11. But I still spend 5 or 6 hours a day reading. I mean, it's just, you can learn so much. I particularly love biography. I just read and read and read. I probably read.
Buffett writes a letter to the shareholders of his company Berkshire Hathaway every year. He mentions books that he likes to read in these letters. There are some books that he has mentioned more than once, and some of these books have been heavily recommended by him. In this video, you'll get to know 5 of Warren Buffett's favorite recommendations. Each of these books will teach you something different, and you can pick the one that you like best to start reading. But I highly recommend checking all of them out. The Intelligent Investor is probably Warren Buffett's favorite book, and he has recommended this book an uncountable number of times.
Recommend first and foremost The Intelligent Investor. The Intelligent Investor.
Buffett started reading books about investment at a very young age. And when he started out, he was trying to look at stock charts and predict where prices will go, until he found The Intelligent Investor by Ben Graham.
I literally had read every book in the Omaha Public Library by the time I was 11 on the subject of investing. And there were a lot of books. And there were technical books, Edwards and McGee. I mean, that was a classic in those days. And a whole bunch of them, Garfield drew. And I enjoyed reading them a lot. Some of them I read more than once. But I never developed a philosophy about it. I enjoyed it. I charted stocks. I did all that sort of thing. Graham's book gave me a philosophy, a bedrock philosophy on investing that made sense.
This book changed his life. The most important idea in The Intelligent Investor is that stocks aren't just numbers on a screen, but that they are pieces of a business. And if you're buying a stock, you should do the same amount of research you would do as if you are actually buying the business.
He taught me to think about stocks as pieces of businesses rather than ticker symbols or things that, you could charter or something of the sort. And so it was.
The Intelligent Investor is a great place to start with to understand the psychology of investing and the mistakes you're likely to make in a long journey. Since investing is mostly about your temperament and compounding is a very long-term game, this is a great place to start.
The Intelligent Investor with chapters 8 and 20 are the ones that you really should read.
The second book is Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits by Phil Fisher. Along with The Intelligent Investor, this is a book that Buffett has recommended a number of times.
Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits was written in 1958. One of the best books on investment was written by Phil Fisher called Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits.
One of the interesting ideas in this book is the scuttlebutt method for researching stocks. Buffett has used this method a number of times to great advantage to figure out whether to buy a stock or to pass on it.
And it talked about the importance, or the usefulness of what he called the scuttlebutt method. And, that was something I didn't learn from Graham, but every now and then it's turned out to be very useful. Now,
I saw you do it with American Express and the salad oil scandal.
Yeah.
You're still doing it on Apple, decades later.
The basic idea, you can learn a lot of things just by asking in some cases. I used to, if I got interested in the coal industry, just say, to pick one out of the air, when I was much younger, more energetic, if I went and talked to the heads of 10 coal companies and I asked each one of them way later into the conversation after they got feeling very, it felt like talking, and I would just, I'd just say, if you had to go away for 10 years on a desert island and you had to put all of your family's money into one of your competitors, which one would it be and why? And then, and then I'd ask them if they had to sell short one of their competitors for 10 years, all their family money, why? And everybody loves talking about their competitors. And if you do that with 10 different companies, you'll probably have a better fix on the economics of the coal industry than any one of those individuals has.
Charlie Munger said here that Buffett used the scuttlebutt method on American Express during the salad oil scandal. We have a complete video on that, so be sure to check it out. But the gist is, if you understood the psychology of investing from The Intelligent Investor and want to start researching individual stocks, Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits is a good book to start with. The third book is The Essays of Warren Buffett by Larry Cunningham. Warren Buffett isn't just a great investor. He's also a prolific speaker and writer in his own right. His letters, essays, and speeches are all over the internet, and if you're trying to find a single collection of his thoughts, it can be hard. Here's a book that Warren Buffett himself recommended for this.
Probably the best, I would say that the most representative book on my views is the one that Larry Cunningham has put together, because he essentially has taken my words and rearranged them in a more order. He's taken them from a number of years, and what he has put together there best represents my views. We've got 20 years of annual reports or so or more on the internet, plus articles in Fortune, all kinds of things. So it's probably a bias I have, but I like to think that I laid out those views as better than somebody who's rewriting them. But I'll let you make that decision. We've said in these meetings, we've said in the annual reports, we've said exactly what we do.
One of my favorite podcasts is the Founders Podcast by David Senra. What David does in this podcast is he picks up biographies of successful founders and businessmen, and he reads them and shares what he learns with his audience. The biography of a successful founder condenses a lifetime of their struggles, achievements, and learnings into less than an hour. Wouldn't it be great if there was something similar for the world of investing, where you get to learn about the investing secrets and styles of the greatest investors by reading a book? Actually, there is such a book. The fourth book is Money Masters by John Train.
Actually, I think John Train's Money Masters is an interesting book.
It teaches you about the knowledge that the greatest investors have gained over time, and even Warren Buffett is one of the chapters in this book. But what's also surprising is that Martin Shkreli, one of the most notorious and successful investors on Wall Street bets, recommended this book during one of his live streams.
And I actually have this book, The Money Masters. It's by John Train. The entire thing's marked up pretty bad. Anyway, it's what's interesting about this book is that it goes through investor by each chapter is an investor. The first chapter is about Warren Buffett, and it's got some things in here that nobody knows about Warren Buffett, which is pretty cool, because you would think someone who's the most successful investor ever, the richest man in the world, that's somebody that has been studied and sort of everybody knows everything about Warren Buffett. But the reality is, there's things in here that are really not understood about Warren Buffett, and one of those is the so-called Buffett return, which is a ratio which we'll talk about in a second.
Now, I know that most of these books have been about learning to invest and researching individual stocks by yourself, which is great if you're just a beginner. But one piece of advice that Buffett has repeatedly given to beginner investors is that investing in index funds instead of going for mutual funds or picking stocks for yourself is probably the best bet.
The best single thing you could have done on March 11th, 1942, when I bought my first stock, was just buy an index fund and never look at a headline, never think about stocks anymore. And I pointed out that if you'd put $10,000 in an index fund that reinvested dividends, and it would come to $51 million now. You didn't have to worry about what stock to buy. You didn't have to worry what day to get in and out. You didn't know the Federal Reserve would exist, whatever it might be. And America works.
If you don't know what an index fund is, it's quite simple. Instead of picking individual stocks yourself, you get to buy a piece of an index that tracks the market. So you get a small piece of all the top companies in the market. Buffett's last book recommendation is
A book that came out just in the last few months in the investment world that I would certainly recommend everybody is Common Sense on Mutual Funds by Jack Bogle. Jack is an honest guy, and he knows the business, and if mutual fund investors listen to him, they would save billions and billions of dollars a year, and he tells it exactly like it is. So,
before Bogle started Vanguard, the company that is now famous for its low-cost index funds, American investors had no cheap way to buy into the index. Bogle's venture has helped millions of investors invest in stocks with very low costs, and Buffett respects him a lot for this.
Jack Bogle, who I talked about in the annual report, Jack Bogle has probably done more for the American investor than any man in the country. Jack, could you stand up? There he is. Jack Bogle, many years ago, he wasn't the only one that was talking about an index fund, but it wouldn't have happened without him. I mean, the truth is it was not in the interest of Wall Street. It was not in their interest actually to have the development of an index fund because it brought down fees dramatically. Index funds overall have delivered for shareholders a result that has been better than Wall Street professionals as a whole, and part of the reason for that is that they brought down the costs very significantly. So it's Jack's 88th birthday on Monday, so I just say happy birthday, Jack, and thank you on behalf of American investors.
So those are 5 books that Buffett has recommended to all investors as required reading. Is there any favorite book of yours that I've left out? Let me know in the comments below. For more videos that will make you a smarter investor, like this video and subscribe to the Market Sentiment channel. Likes and subscribes are the only way a small channel like ours can grow, so it would mean a lot if you show your support.